Hey, everybody. One of the most common questions over the past decade or more that I've gotten from students is, am I in mixed voice? And then I have students reach out to me and send me clips of things. Is that mixed voice? And it's a very common issue. So I'm going to cover that today. If you want to learn about if you're in mixed voice or if you're finding mixed voice or if it's working right for you, then join me and we'll chat about it. All right, so this time, let's turn my microphone down a little bit so I don't hurt anybody with my audio. So, let's see. I have some notes here. We're going to go over different things. One of the first things that you should be concerned about in terms of am I in mixed voice? Am I in mixed voice? Am I in mixed voice? Is, can you glide over your bridge and go to the very top of your range or some version of, the upper part of your range to the bottom? So that's me going over my bridge, almost up to, thank you Siri, going up to G5, down to wherever I was going there. So that is a version of mixed voice where I'm finding something that's working, that's gliding the whole way up and the whole way down. There is no break, discernible break. There's no So that obviously would lead us to the next thing, which is, are you hearing your bridge? Is your voice breaking apart? And that's another thing we get into here, where there's people that will go down this road and they're kind of maybe making some of the right sounds or they're doing some of the right things, but their vocal cords are breaking apart, and they get to a place where they're like, I can't tell if I'm in head voice or falsetto, or I can't tell. Well, first of all, falsetto is very easy, and you have to start learning what it feels like, but also what it sounds like. If you hear a persistent every time you sing, and you should be able to hear that. If I come up here past my bridge, that is my chords broken apart. So it became very easy. Mixed voice is not that easy. It can be different, levels of easiness, so to speak. But if your chords are breaking apart, then obviously we've lost resonance. Try to push into it. Yes, diaphragmatically or whatever. It just becomes more airy because your chords are broken apart. Everything we're doing here, everything around mixed voice is always centering around chord closure. Chord closure in terms of singing is kind of like everything all the time. We're always trying to maintain a level of chord closure. Anytime that we're not and we're using a little bit of extra air or too much air, our voice is going to go downhill and shit is just going to keep getting worse and worse. So, are you using falsetto? Are you reaching a point where your voice is pulling in tension and then you're breaking? Even if you're going, like that. There's no version of mix in there, even if I'm making some of these sounds, because my chords have come apart. So pay attention to that. Head voice. A lot of people will give me this head voice sound like, and they're still breaking, and they're kind of just coming up to the top of their range, and they're still breaking. So there's still a very discernible break. Now, when you start learning mix, you still might have a break, and there still might be, some version of that you're getting to, but that's part of the learning process. So be aware of that when you're going down here. Speaking of being aware of that, also be aware that you're not going to, just like almost anything in life, you're not going to go from where you are and learn one trick and then be over here. It does not work that way. Almost nothing works that way. You're not going to learn, I watched a video and I learned how to do mixed voice and now I can sing. It's never, ever going to work that way. It is a journey. It is a constant journey. It is a check in with yourself journey. It is a, I got a little better this day. I didn't get better that day. I found something this day. I didn't find, it's always going to be a journey. So your voice is going to start out kind of weak and you're going to learn about these new coordinations, and therein lies what this is it's a coordination that most of us are not familiar with on a vocal level, including me. I was not familiar with it at all, which was why it was so foreign and hard to find. But then when I did find it, I became excited about, being able to sing that high and everything like that. Okay, so let me jump to another part of this. So I was kind of talking about your break. I was talking about hitting a wall and your voice breaking. So if you're dealing with that, you're most likely not dealing with anything that's head voice. Now let's talk about chest voice and ramping into a wall. I have some students that can sing relatively high in their chest voice, and they'll kind of start doing these belting things and stuff, and literally, to me, it seems comical, but they're not paying attention to the kind of elements of mixed voice. Being right out of the gate, again, can you rise from the note? If you're going, ah, and you're like, is that mixed voice? Can you rise from that note? Ah! Well, then no. You might once again be engaging some muscles that might want to come into mix, but it's as simple as this. Can you rise from the note? If I was singing Soundgarden again, mad Audioslave from my creator. So that's up here. No. If I cannot rise from that note, it's going to be pulling in more head voice, so it's going to get worse sounding, but still I can rise from the note. So I'm not hitting a wall and I'm not getting locked in. That means any song that you're singing on a guitar, as you get better with this and recognize the elements of oh yeah, I'm supposed to be able to rise. I'm supposed to not getting locked in and hitting a wall. You should be able to take that song, take a capo, keep capoing it up step by step by step, and trying it like that. Therein lies another exciting element, again, about mixed voice, is that when you start kind of getting this, be excited by the fact that you're kind of learning this mix, and then you're learning how to keep your throat open and move up and up. But like I said, it doesn't come in a day. It doesn't come in a month. It's going to take quite a bit of time, and you have a lot of elements to put together. Vowel modification, keeping your throat open, how to put power into it, etc., etc. Another part of this, loudness versus, quietness. You have to be loud to do it, then it's not right. You have to be super quiet to do it. That would actually be more correct than loud, because loud is never a great thing. Too many people are always like, I can sing really loud. I've had people that want to come to me and record with me, or people that want to work with me, and they're like, that's not you to know. I like to sing really loud. And it's like, that's probably a problem. And then they'll get here and start blowing their voice out, and it's usually never good. If you have a naturally loud voice and stuff, that's cool. But it usually doesn't really matter. And what I mean by that is that it's kind of like a parlor trick. Nowadays, everything is mic'd, and you're mic'd, and we learn how to use the microphone to your benefit. So possibly if you're doing some show randomly where you're not using a microphone, then it might be cool. It might be useful. But most of the time, if you're being overly loud for extended periods of time, it's only going to do bad things for you. The voice is not made to just be this fucking loud thing. I guess once again, if you get into opera and things like that, we can keep working on that. But once again, it doesn't really matter that much, especially in rock music or the things I teach. So if you have to be loud to do something like this, you're going down the wrong road. If you're being really quiet and you cannot get any louder, so you're forced to be quiet. Let me get a chord that works. Is that mixed voice? Well, not really. Once again, if I can't get any louder, then it's not, it's not really that usable. So you're kind of in a place again where it's like, well, you got to go back to the foundation. Can you rise from the note? Can we make it louder? Does it require support, diaphragmatic support? Do I need to push from the stomach to get mixed voice to work? No. You can make these sounds. I actually learned how to mix before I even learned how to use diaphragmatic support. The courses I was watching and listening to all the time didn't mention anything about support, so it was kind of not good in that respect, but at least I learned that you don't need support to make these work. If I go, again, through my bridge, I'm kind of being a little bit, volume-wise, it's pretty balanced. I'm not really being overly loud, but I'm not supporting anything. I'm just literally making a sound. You hear that? So if I can't take that then as I get better at this, which is the key, and start to then I can start putting support under it, which is always going to be the key thing, is to get back to your support and start driving from here. But anyway, do you need support to do this? No. Jaw tension. I've had a lot of students recently where they're having a lot of different issues with jaw tension. They're trying to manipulate the sound of their voice with their jaw. They're trying to rise and change their placement with their jaw. And they're trying to use their jaw muscles to take their voice higher. If you have your jaw or the swallowing muscle, if you take your thumb or your first finger here and go right under the shin, and if you go and swallow, you're going to feel muscles go move all around, right? They shouldn't make that sound, or you probably would have to go to a doctor. But you'll feel those muscles engage. If those muscles are engaging when you're trying to sing almost anywhere, most of the time that is not going to help you. It's bad. Just across the board. Are they going to engage in certain varying ways and certain times with certain things? Yeah, they're going to try to get in there with certain vowels, certain words, certain shapes, whatever. But for the most part, we are almost always isolating and trying to get rid of jaw, trying to get rid of anything happening here. And we're always trying to get rid of this and get this out of the mix. If you are inclined to start any scale and do anything like that, you're in the wrong place. If you're starting to reach higher for higher notes or distortion, and this jaw is doing anything, once again, you're in the wrong place. Watch some of your favorite singers. Watch some of these heavy distorted singers and stuff. Watch physically what they're doing. Once again, are they walking around on stage while they're doing this stuff? Are they physically arrested, having to stand there and bear down? Watch these things, because they're a telltale sign of what more of a healthy thing is. Somebody that's been touring and has to do this shit every day, and then somebody that's, sitting in a studio like, I think I got this, So there's a big difference. What do we got now? There's something, once again, two separate voices I wrote down. At first, when you're learning this, it might feel a little bit like two separate voices. I think that's kind of a healthy thing. If you take a fast scale like this, ma 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 ma, 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 ma 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 ma, you might feel for a while as you're practicing stuff like that, or if you're practicing a mixed voice regimen, that you're kind of still dealing with maybe like a chest voice and a head voice. That's kind of okay. After a while, you're going to learn to amalgamate and bring these things together into more of a concise kind of, mixed voice. So at first, yeah, it might feel a little bit like two different things you're doing. Ma 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 ma. I've actually broken this down before in videos I've made where we're dealing with kind of two separate sets of musculature. The chest down here and more of a speaking voice register and these muscles. And then the nasality and soft palate. So you can hear a distinct kind of sound difference in there. But what happens is that when we learn to mix, our larynx starts moving itself down. And this was one of the things that really helped me to understand what needed to happen for this to work. As I sing higher and I get closer to my bridge, if my larynx is coming up and then I get closer to my bridge, I'm done. I'm going to flip. That's actually a mechanism built into the throat to help you from tearing your vocal cords and hurting yourself. That's why your voice flips apart. This happens to animals too. Once again, I've talked about this before, where you might have a dog that goes, boo, 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 something like that. They're dealing with the same set of circumstances where they have a head voice, they have a chest voice. So that's just a mechanism that's built in there. Anyway, if your larynx is rising, the weight that you're building, that tension, is getting flatter and flatter because your voice is rising in the neck like this, up against the hard palate, and then eventually that pressure cannot be handled anymore. Therefore, you flip into falsetto. When we learn how to mix, we learn how to transition and move the voice box down like this. Our larynx drops, and we're stretching the vocal cords. If you go and yawn, and go from O to oo, you might start to feel this tilting sensation I'm talking about. It feels like this. So what happens then, if you're dealing kind of with two separate voices, is that they start to gel together, and those muscles start to play nice with each other. They start to go like this. Instead of just right here or up here, we start to have like this. So it becomes more of one voice. Make sense? Does mixed voice change how you sing? I've had somebody comment recently and said, they're having trouble finding mixed voice, etc., etc. Does it change how you sing? Yes. If you sang a certain way for a certain number of years, 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, your whole life, and then you're trying to figure this out, you most likely have a lot of very strong habits built into certain coordinations. And then somebody like me is going to come along and tell you that you're doing a whole bunch of things wrong. And, therein lies the problem with a lot of this. A lot of these things that you've built over the years are going to have to be changed to do this. When you get louder, closer to your bridge, you're fucking yourself up. And that's one of the hardest things for people to understand about this, because the instinct is always in your body that the higher I go, the more badass it's going to sound. And then somebody like me comes along and says, no, you can't do that. And then people are like, that sucks. And then when they practice, or if they're in a band or a rehearsal space, they feel like, oh, now my higher notes are getting it weaker. Fuck that. I'm not doing that. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I do. That's going to be your journey at first. If you're rehearsing in a band, just some advice. If you're rehearsing in a band every week, or whatever you're doing, you're not going to be able to learn these techniques and then just bring them into the rehearsal space. You're not going to be able to do that. They might start to creep their way in, and that's great. But for the most part, you're going to have to do habitually what you're instinctually driven and muscle memory up to do in the rehearsal space, and then work on this stuff behind the scenes. Lightly start trying to bring it into the songs or the things you're doing or practicing or whatever. I had the same problem where I kind of liked my voice and I kind of liked the things I did or whatever. But then I would try to do them live or try to do them, rehearsing, and nope, you're hitting a wall pretty bad. So your voice is quieting itself down when you mix. That doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. It will get better, but a mixed voice is quieter than a full chest voice. Why is that? Because a mixed voice is a compressed voice. We are compressing. Similar to distortion or screams, they get quieter. Why? Because shit is getting in the way. If I have an open voice, it is unscathed and it's open. The sound is allowed to travel a lot easier. If I start compressing anywhere in the voice, it's going to quiet it down. It's going to dampen it, just like a drum that's wide open, and then you put something on the head of the drum, it becomes a little bit quieter. It becomes dampened. So it becomes quieter. Then we try to utilize support and stuff to get our volume back up and running. But like I said, your voice is getting quieter. That's another main catalyst of understanding that you're mixing, and especially when you're learning it at first. I made this analogy recently. Somebody commented about it. It's very similar, like we're pushing in the clutch. We have first gear. We know what first gear is. And we run that up until it starts fucking getting in the red. But we need to learn how to push in the clutch, back off that pressure as we get close to our bridge so that we can go up behind the soft palate and up into our head. Our resonance is like a thermometer. And it needs to move, and it wants to move, and you can feel that. It's not just a cute little thing I'm doing, like, think about it like a thermometer. It's a realistic thing that's happening. That's why it's called chest voice and head voice. Chest resonates in the chest, head voice resonates in the head, pharyngeal resonates in the nose. We're letting it resonate. If we're getting in the way of that, then, anyway. So when we are mixing, when we are going to our bridge and beyond our bridge, think about it like we have a threshold, and we're moving in and out of that. We're moving above it or below it. What that threshold is, in terms of mixed voice, is your soft palate. That soft palate has an opening where we can go up into the nose, and we're either allowing that resonance to move up here like a teardrop shape, or we're not, and we're hitting and we're going straight down. So the voice gets quieter. Now, once again, it actually does get quieter for a reason too, which is that we're literally, the voice is moving backwards, and moving behind the soft palate. So if you heard yourself in a live setting and you're doing really well and you can hear yourself and whatever, and then you start mixing, then you're going to get quiet and you're going to be like, oh no, something's wrong. No, it's not wrong. It's just the way you're hearing yourself. You might have to compress your voice, through a program or something. It's the way that things are working. So trust in the process. Also, trust in the process of what you're doing here. Like I was mentioning, is your voice going to change? Yes, considerably. Is your whole voice going to change? No. But the way you go about singing is going to change a lot. And at first it's going to be frightening. And at first you're going to be like, I don't know if I like this as much or whatever. But be excited about the process. Throw your voice way up here when you start learning these things. Find music that challenges you, not 1 or 2 notes over your bridge, but way the fuck over your bridge. And be excited about that. Keep working on that. Then what happens? After a set of months or whatever, however much you practice, you will start to find that you go back to sing songs you used to sing, and they're way easier. And a lot of that is not only just the mixed voice, but it's getting out of here. I'll say this before I tap out here. One of your main things that's going to be a big part of your success as a singer across the spectrum with chest voice, head voice, everything, all the time, is getting rid of these muscles and loosening this. The more you can rely on any other muscle groups and get out of your neck and your throat and your jaw, the better off you're going to be. Distortion, mixed, screams, everything. The more you can start to find and rely on other muscle groups that separate you from this heaviness from right here, you're going to be better and better and better each time. So I hope that helped. I hope I addressed some of your concerns, and keep going with this. Like I said, keep running with it. Be gentle on yourself while you're doing this. If you're hurting yourself or you're blowing your voice out or you got some bad information or whatever, take some rest and come back to it the next couple of days. But that main thing you're chasing after is just finding a sound up here that allows you to transition up and down. Take it with simple things like lip bubbles. All right. Yay. All right. I'm going to make another video now based on distortional voice. Am I distorting correctly? And we'll see if we can address some of those concerns. Thank you for joining me.